The WNBA draft ratings are officially in, and boy, oh boy, do we have some things to talk about.
Let's discuss the elephant in the locker room. You know who we're referring to, UConn icon Geno Auriemma, the master of passive-aggressive interviews and the apparent unofficial head of the anybody. However, Caitlin Clark's crown gem Paige Bueckers just had her WNBA draft moment. But instead of the media frenzy we saw when Caitlin Clark was selected first overall the previous year, we received a quiet welcome and, to be honest, a harsh reminder of reality.
For the last few months, the mainstream media, they have tried to convince us that Paige Bueckers is a draw. Me personally, I think she's a star, but I'm not exactly convinced that she is a draw.
We must not sugarcoat this situation. Not only was Bueckers' draft audience underwhelming, but it completely failed in comparison to Clark's, which drew a healthy 1.3 million viewers for Bueckers. But if you believe this is really a coincidence, you haven't been paying attention. When Caitlin Clark announced the draft last year, an incredible 2.6 million people showed up, which doubled the number of eyes and doubled the buzz.
You'll find a lot of stars, but there's only a handful of draws. There's only a handful of people over the past 40 or 50 years who have the impact, the drawing power to elevate the product into the mainstream.
Bueckers is the next face of women's basketball, and the media has been doing everything in their power to promote her. ESPN has been airing highlight reels, feature interviews, and even inserting Geno Auriemma's famous smirk and post-game pressers to keep the story going. But the truth is that no amount of Connecticut mystique or coach speak can hide the fact that Clark is the clear winner.
Whether or not Paige Bueckers is a star or a draw, that remains to be seen. Judging by the ratings for the Dump Diver draft the other night, Paige Bueckers is not a mainstream draw yet. WNBA drew 1.3 million viewers the other night for the draft on ESPN. Now, that number, it can be credited 100% to Paige Bueckers because every other player involved was completely unknown.
This isn't about Paige's lack of skill. There's no denying that she is game, but star power. That allure that fills stadiums and takes over sports talk radio, that's Caitlin Clark's territory. And based on these draft figures, we just saw that the basketball crowd was casting their votes with their eyes and wasn't paying attention to the Geno-led marketing machine. Let's face it, Geno Auriemma has a legacy. He has more titles than most teams. But at some point his criticism ceased to sound like knowledgeable analysis and instead began to sound more like envious uncle energy.
Although 1.3 million is a great number for the WNBA, it is significantly below what Caitlin Clark drew last year. Matter of fact, it's 50% lower than what Caitlin Clark drew last year.
It's lovely when someone like that shows up at Thanksgiving dinner with passive-aggressive remarks, but Geno has been doing that to Caitlin Clark for the past 2 seasons.
A great college player like Caitlin was, the delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's 3rd or 4th in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
He has been diminishing her significance, downplaying her stats, and reminding everyone that her admirers are insane. The UConn PR machine may still be in operation, but things are beginning to fall apart during the draft broadcast. The vibe was off, interviews went badly, names were mispronounced, and the energy was low. It seemed like everyone in the room knew they were standing in the shadow of last year's main event. Meanwhile, his star student was overshadowed by someone who, spoiler alert, didn't need to wear a UConn jersey to become a national icon.
I'm here with Anissa and Rakia, and we are holding it down right now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
It's okay.
Sorry. What?
Go ahead, say your name.
Cheyenne Zellers. I'm so sorry. That is embarrassing. Cheyenne, I apologize, by the way. That's so embarrassing.
Even veteran broadcaster Tim Wilson didn't mince words when he said goodbye. He was correct when he said that there was a huge difference between this year's draft and the previous one. One had a star who created history, while the other had a star the league is attempting to create.
25, second most viewed WNBA draft of all time, with an average of 1.25 million viewers, with a peak of 1.46 million viewers, up 119% versus 2023. And I know what the question may be, 2023, 2020. Well, Ben, just out of curiosity, because we're all curious around here, right? We all want to be well informed. What is it compared to the 2024?
Let's zoom out and see why ratings are so important. In professional sports, ratings are more than just numbers. They are dollar signs that influence everything from ad spending to sponsor deals to TV contracts. A 49% decline in viewership is not a statistic that you dismiss. Rather, it's a marketing crisis, a boardroom panic, or an ESPN employee having a heated Zoom call with their boss.
It's down 49%. 49% of the audience said, yeah, I'll go watch paint dry instead. In fact, some people, Jason Whitlock, he didn't even realize the WNBA draft took place the other night. He found that out the next morning, that Paige Bueckers and the WNBA draft had actually taken place. Last year, 2.45 million, peaked with 3.09 million, up 307% from the previous high back in 2004.
Things grow particularly difficult at this point, especially because the WNBA and ESPN spent months. They attempted to imitate the Clark Playbook feature articles, preparing Paige as though she would carry the torch into a new era. The public didn't react to the breathless coverage that hinted at a generational moment, and why should they when the original is still burning brightly every night? Why would you settle for the knockoff?
601,000 from 2004. So 2024 was up 307% from 2004. 1.06 million women viewers was the 2024 draft. Now here we go, folks. This is when we get into the nooks, into the crannies, and into the fun.
Not to mention social media. Twitter was ablaze when those figures fell. No Caitlyn, no viewership. According to one widely shared post, they attempted to substitute a harsh yet precise floodlight for the sun. The public has made their decision and is not perplexed. Not only does Caitlin Clark play women's basketball, but she is now a member of the team.
Why was last year's draft such a big deal? Well, Caitlin Clark was getting drafted. Reason number one, Caitlin Clark getting drafted. Reason number two, why it was such a big deal. Well, Caitlin Clark was going number one overall. And the third reason why, calling a spade here, these three women, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink. Perfect storm. A perfect storm, a perfect bill of goods.
And that's precisely what's making people like Geno Auriemma crazy. It must hurt to have spent decades creating the most recognizable brand in women's college basketball only to watch an Iowan player steal the thunder. Clark did what no one else has done in years. She made women's basketball a must-watch on television by turning regular season games into headline news and transforming college gyms into NBA arenas. She accomplished this without Geno's assistance. In fact, she did it in spite of the unceasing stares from people like him.
Didn't you tell us that in 2004 it was 601,000? My point exactly. They still haven't rebounded from the days of 2004. They still haven't managed to maintain that same audience from 2004. Until Caitlin Clark showed up. Until Caitlin Clark arrived on the scene, and then they're going to boast about a measly 1.25 million. You guys want to know what's funny about 1.25 million? 1.25 million is closer to the 601,000 in 2004 than it is to the 2.45 million in 2025. We're already closer to 2004 numbers than we were to 2025 numbers.
This entire situation highlights the WNBA's and its media partners' continued adherence to outdated formulas believe they can create a superstar by having a committee hit the next face of the league button, and people will automatically follow. However, you can't fake gravity or charm, and Caitlin Clark has both in plenty.
1 million people disappeared. 1.2 million people, to be fair, disappeared. We can spin that as many ways as we want. The trend is already coming back down. The trend is already coming back down. Juju Watkins next year draft, 1.09 million. Oh, another 1 million view draft. But we went from 2.4 to 1.2 to now 1.09. Who's after Juju? My point exactly. We're already forecasting a 2027 draft of 650,000.
While Geno can continue to hold press conferences full of patronizing remarks and subtle criticisms, Caitlin Clark is defining the new ones. Paige Bueckers may be a part of the league's future. She may win titles, receive all-star selections, and have a fantastic pro career. But according to this draft, she isn't the one setting the standard because that woman wears number 22 in Indiana.
Unlike Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers has been embraced with open and hairy arms into the WNBA. Players have embraced her potentially in ways that we don't even know about. More importantly, the mainstream media has embraced her. And I'm starting to wonder if this media-created rivalry that is building between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark will completely overshadow Angel Reese.
When you compare Paige Bueckers to Caitlin Clark, there is an obvious question that the media deliberately ignores. Who is more important, winning a prize once or entirely altering the NCAA record books as if you were the editor-in-chief? The mainstream media has heavily emphasized Bueckers' championship victory, thereby portraying it as the pinnacle of genius, but in the process, they have downplayed Clark's statistical destruction of established records. By doing something that no man or woman has ever done in college basketball, Caitlin not only outperformed some outdated standards, but also left them in the dust.
I've seen Paige Bueckers across social media for the last 5 years, it feels like. She's an elite female college basketball player. Had some knee injuries that she's rebounded from, but she's healthy right now. So she kind of sits behind Caitlin Clark. And I think that makes her a fade for me because I think the Caitlin Clark shadow is real. I think Caitlin Clark is so dominant in changing the game.
Yes, Bueckers won a national championship for UConn, which is a huge accomplishment that deserves recognition. But let's not fool ourselves. Caitlin Clark destroyed a record that had stood for 50 years. A half-century of scoring history was erased in an instant because of one player who made the logo 3ES look routine. That's not just amazing, it's myth-making.
For as much as people want to say Paige Bueckers is this, Paige Bueckers is that, Paige Bueckers is this, a 500,000 drop-off, okay. A 1.2 million viewer drop-off, yikes. That I'm not sure if that is okay.
And things become much more bizarre from here. Not content to just be the top scorer, Caitlin led the country in assists several times. Let's pause to consider that she was giving out the most assists in college basketball at the same time. Additionally, he scored more points than any other player in history. If Steph Curry and Chris Paul combined to create a single, terrifying, record-breaking basketball robot, we're talking about a player who is dominant in both creation and execution, a rare dual threat that the game hardly ever sees at this level. If you want the raw numbers, let's do it. Clark had an average score of 31.6. She finished her final season of college with 8.9 assists and 7.4 rebounds, which is essentially a walking triple-double. Bueckers scores a solid 21.9 points per night. With 5.2 rebounds and 3.8 assists, good figures, no question, but they don't match Clark's in terms of weight class. One was building the board and establishing the rules, while the other was playing chess.
Some of the reactions, people aren't going to let it skip that we're not comparing it to 2024, down 49%. Shout out to you, Jar Jar Binks. He had to let him know twice. Big win for the WNBA draft. Yeah, they did over 1 million, big win. They're closer to 2006 numbers, 2004 numbers than they were to 2024 numbers. You guys get the point. Why skip 2024? Does 2024 not exist?
Even more annoying, though, is how the media seems intent on denying this disparity, and instead of highlighting Clark's wealth of accomplishments, they shift the focus to banners and awards. It's like drawing a comparison between a fireworks show and a volcano eruption. Clark's influence went far beyond the box score. She transformed routine games into national spectacles. She didn't just fill arenas. She filled them with anticipation, headlines, and mainstream buzz. She didn't need a championship to change the landscape. Even though the latter is beautiful, she achieved it with unadulterated skill and a confident demeanor that attracted millions of fans. Her impact was profound, sending ripples into living rooms that had never seen women's college basketball before.
Great showing. Everything is compared to BC, before clock. That's right, we have a BC and we have an AC type of era in the WNBA. Guess 2024 never happened. I wonder why all the numbers are always compared to 2023. We all know why.
Not to mention the circumstances, all the while, Clark was the main target every night, and every team strategy was to stop her box and one triple team. Trash defenses, that's legendary territory. Most stars crumble under that kind of pressure, but Caitlin thrived in it. Now, let's compare the narrative treatment when LeBron James broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record in sports. None of it worked. Everyone knew Caitlin was getting the ball, and she still torched them. The entire globe stopped, with hour-long specials, think pieces, and wall-to-wall coverage. Before the discussion shifted to, yeah, but she doesn't have a ring. Caitlin Clark made headlines by breaking the all-time NCAA scoring record, which had stood for 50 years. That's actually how we're now assessing brilliance.
1.25 isn't dominating. You maybe haven't been following the ratings. 1.25 is a regular Caitlin Clark game on a weekend. That's regular to us. That's nothing. That's nothing to us. It is what it is.
Bueckers and Clark are both exceptional players, but only one of them is continuously exposed to a long list of qualifiers and warnings. It's this kind of inconsistency that leaves you wondering what's actually happening. Clark's expressions on his face, everything about her competitive fire and her on-court persona is examined, and discussed Bueckers receives fluff pieces and red carpet praise in the meantime. This isn't just a double standard. It's a coordinated public relations effort masquerading as journalism. Additionally, if you were hoping for a follow-up to last year's spectacular Caitlin-fueled spectacle, you were severely let down. Instead, we saw awkward interviews, fashion choices that felt more like a TikTok experiment than a professional league moment, and an energy level that was best described as a mid-afternoon nap.
I've also noticed that the media has been overwhelmingly positive in their coverage of Paige Bueckers. Now, this is pure speculation on my part, but this is what I think the media is doing. The spankers in the media actually believe that Caitlin Clark is popular because she's white. They think little girls idolize her because she lacks melanin. They think grown men watched women's basketball for the first time because a white girl was dominating the sport. I know for normal people it sounds ridiculous, but this is how our media thinks.
That change in tone wasn't coincidental. Rather, it seemed as though the league was making a statement and guiding this ship in a new path. Direction, mind you, that seemed strangely insensitive to the popular momentum that Clark had created. Fans saw social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons of last year's draft and this one, where the energy was where the class was the consensus, and the league offered no real explanation, just silence and vibes. This wasn't just a change in vibes, it was a calculated branding decision. The league appears to be trying to redefine what it wants to be, and in doing so, it may be sacrificing the very thing that brought it to the dance. Clark didn't just increase viewership. She redefined what was possible, and instead of accepting that, the WNBA is hedging its bets, hoping it has the ability to propel Paige Bueckers' story into a more manageable future.
I think the media is creating this rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, hoping that Paige Bueckers will become the new face of the WNBA. The media will continue demonizing Caitlin Clark while praising her rival. And they're hoping that people will instantly follow Paige Bueckers because she also lacks melanin. You see, the media is fine with Paige being the face of the WNBA because she's already proven to be a loyal comrade. They can depend on her, maybe even control her. They can't do that with Caitlin Clark, either because she is unwilling or she's realized that she does not need the media to be a mainstream draw.
When you consider how differently the media portrays these two celebrities, the bias becomes glaringly obvious. Every defensive move, every missed shot, and every facial expression of Caitlin Clark are scrutinized as if she were on trial, while Paige Bueckers is practically clad in Teflon and is lauded in every headline, even when her numbers don't line up. Some coverage has even gone too far, criticizing Clark's race while giving Bueckers a free pass. The disparity in treatment has become so obvious that supporters are no longer whispering about it. They're calling it aloud, and what we're seeing isn't a healthy rivalry between two outstanding athletes. Rather, it's a media-manufactured showdown designed for drama and headlines rather than highlighting each athlete's strengths and celebrating what they bring to the court. The real danger is that the millions of fans who watched because of Clark are beginning to notice this imbalance, seeing their favorite player dismissed, her impact minimized, and they're not staying to watch her get sidelined by media games, which is a problem because when fans start checking out, it appears that those ratings have dropped.
You guys are about to find out, no offense to the Paige fans, you're going to realize that once this season starts, it's still going to be Caitlin Clark 1 in jersey sales.
Honestly, though, things didn't have to be this way. Both Bueckers and Clark are outstanding players in their own right, and their opposing playing styles might provide a potent 1-2 punch that elevates women's basketball to new heights. Bueckers' range and firepower, while Clark's. If the media would just let their stories unfold naturally, we might finally get the iconic rivalry the sport deserves. One born of respect, not manipulation, and most definitely not from Geno's mouth. If you agree, comment Geno is delusional. Smooth control and composure should be celebrated, not pitted against each other. This forced rivalry robs the game of something authentic. To ensure you don't miss anything, click the video on the screen, like, subscribe, and enable all notifications below. We'll see you in the next.